How many men around you look strong but collapse the moment real pressure shows up? You've seen it: loud voices, puffed chests, overconfidence that crumbles the second they're challenged. They walk like giants but think like cowards. And you feel it, don't you? That instinct that something's off, that you're being led, loved, or lied to by someone who couldn't carry your trust if their life depended on it. Because deep down, they're not strong. They're pretending. And in that gap between who they show you and who they really are lies danger. Weak men don't always look weak. They're not always quiet, shy, or insecure. Some wear suits, lift weights, talk big. But none of that matters when pressure hits. Because true strength isn't measured by volume or vanity. It's measured by what you can withstand, what you can control, and what you're willing to face without blinking. And that's what they lack. A man who hasn't built his mind, who hasn't fought through his own darkness, who avoids accountability like fire, that man will ruin your life without ever raising his voice. You may think weakness is harmless. That it's kinder. That it's somehow safer. But the opposite is true. Weak men are dangerous precisely because they hide behind politeness, behind charm, behind emotional fragility. They smile when they want to scream. They agree when they want to control. They leave when you need them most, not because they want to hurt you, but because they can't hold the weight. Their minds are soft. Their spines are flexible. Their loyalty is convenience. And when the test comes, they fail without even realizing what they've lost. This isn't about mocking them. It's about protecting yourself. Because if you don't learn to see the signs, you'll keep trusting men who can't lead, can't protect, can't grow. You'll keep handing your energy, your time, your heart to someone who folds every time life stops being easy. And eventually, it won't be just their weakness. It'll become yours. Their fear will infect your confidence. Their excuses will become your habits. Their instability will become your reality. And you'll wake up wondering when you stopped being powerful. But you can choose differently. You can sharpen your eyes, raise your standards, and start recognizing what real strength looks like. Not loud, not showy, not desperate to prove itself. Real strength is steady, calm, focused. It owns responsibility. It doesn't avoid the storm. It walks into it. That's the energy you need in your life. That's what you deserve. And that's why you need to know the signs. Because the cost of being blind isn't just disappointment, it's devastation. Stay until the end. What you'll discover isn't just how to spot weakness, it's how to stop tolerating, 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 stop tolerating it. You'll learn to guard your space, elevate your circle, and become the kind of person who commands respect without ever asking for it. The truth is brutal, but it will set you free. And once you see clearly, you'll never fall for false strength again. If you want to know whether a man is strong or weak, don't look at how he acts when things are easy. Look at how he responds when the pressure rises, when plans collapse, when life demands something uncomfortable. Weak men run from discomfort. They dodge hard truths, difficult conversations, emotional weight. They look for the exit the moment things stop being convenient. They pretend to be calm, but inside they're panicking because they've built their entire identity on ease, not resilience. And when the world stops catering to them, they fold. Discomfort reveals character. The man who avoids discomfort at all costs is a man who cannot grow, cannot protect, cannot lead. He'll ghost instead of confront. He'll lie instead of confess. He'll distract himself instead of taking And when everything around him starts to fall apart, he'll blame everything but himself. Not because he's evil, but because he's emotionally unequipped to handle the weight of consequence. Weakness doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers in the form of silence, delay, and emotional avoidance. And that's more dangerous than any loud failure. You need to understand the psychology of it. Avoidance is not just a bad habit. It's a symptom of an unstable mind. It's how weak men cope with the threat of failure. They're not ready to lose, so they never truly play. They're not ready to feel pain, so they numb themselves with distractions. They're not ready to grow, so they stay stuck in the illusion of comfort. And that illusion becomes a prison for them and for anyone who believes in them. You can't build anything real with a man who fears discomfort, because every meaningful goal, whether it's a relationship, a mission, or a legacy, requires sacrifice, confrontation, and pressure. If he avoids those things, he avoids his own evolution. And when life inevitably hits, he won't rise. He'll disappear. You'll be left standing in the storm alone, wondering why someone who claimed to care vanished the moment things got hard. But now you know why. He never had the strength. He only had the image. Stop admiring comfort. Stop mistaking peace for power. The strongest men you'll ever meet aren't the ones who smile the most. They're the ones who've walked through fire without asking for applause. They've chosen the hard path. They've suffered with purpose. They've turned pain into wisdom. That's the kind of man who can hold his ground when everything shakes. That's the kind of presence you deserve around you. That's the standard you must adopt if you ever want to build something that lasts. You don't become strong by running. You become strong by facing what others won't. And the first step is this: stop giving your energy to those who flinch at life. Discomfort is not your enemy. It's the doorway to your transformation. Choose to go through it. Choose to become the person who doesn't run. Because once you do, you'll never again confuse temporary calm with real strength. And you'll never again let weakness wear the mask of safety. There's a difference between being respected and being liked, and weak men always choose the wrong one. They chase validation like it's oxygen. They crave praise, approval, constant reassurance. Not because they're confident, but because they're hollow. Their sense of self depends entirely on what others think. They'll change their tone, their beliefs, even their identity just to feel accepted for a moment. And the moment that approval is withdrawn, they collapse into insecurity, anger, or silence, because without validation they have nothing left. That kind of man can never lead. He can never stand alone. He can never walk into a room and command presence without begging for attention. He'll smile when he wants to scream. He'll agree when he knows it's wrong. He'll say yes out of fear, not principle. This is weakness in its most corrosive form, the kind that looks polite on the surface but is rotten at the core. A man who needs to be liked will betray his own values. And if he'll betray himself, he'll betray you. True strength doesn't chase applause. It doesn't need to be seen to feel real. It's built in silence. It moves with clarity. It chooses truth over comfort and principle over popularity. A strong man would rather be hated for what he is than loved for what he pretends to be. Weak men flip that equation. They'll do anything to be accepted, especially by people who don't even respect them. And that desperation becomes a weapon pointed back at you. Watch how he behaves around status, around influence, around admiration. Does he compromise himself to gain approval? Does he play small to keep the peace? Does he flatter everyone except the mirror? If so, you're not looking at confidence. You're looking at fear dressed in charm. And fear, when unaddressed, always turns toxic. He'll start resenting those who don't validate him. He'll punish those who don't feed his ego. He'll crumble under criticism because in his mind, disapproval equals destruction. This isn't about arrogance. It's about alignment. A man who knows who he is does not beg to be seen. He creates space. He earns respect. He stays grounded even when misunderstood. And that kind of man is rare because it requires internal power, not external praise. Weak men can't sustain that. They're addicted to being liked because it feels safer than being real. But in chasing safety, they lose substance. You have to make a choice. Stop giving your time to those who trade their soul for social comfort. Stop admiring those who gain approval but lose integrity. Respect is earned through courage. Validation is borrowed through fear. Only one lasts. Build your life around those who have the spine to be disliked, the strength to stand alone, and the vision to act without applause. Because once you align with real power, the noise fades. And in that silence, your life finally becomes your own. Weak men hate power, but only because they don't have it. They'll pretend to be above it. They'll mock ambition, criticize leadership, and roll their eyes at anyone trying to rise. But underneath that false humility is envy, a deep, bitter resentment for those who move with strength, speak with authority, and command attention without begging for it. That resentment doesn't come from wisdom. It comes from inferiority. When a man feels powerless, his only option is to shame the powerful, not to build but to poison, not to grow but to tear down. These are the men who label strength as arrogance, assertiveness as toxicity, discipline as control. Not because those traits are wrong, but because those traits remind them of everything they've failed to become. They don't want to rise, so they try to drag others down. They mask their fear as morality. They clothe their envy in fake virtue. And they use that disguise to manipulate, to guilt, to confuse. Because if they can't lead, they'll at least try to stop others from leading. This is where weakness becomes dangerous. Not because of what it lacks, but because of what it envies. A man who resents power will always sabotage it. He'll undercut decisions, sow doubt, encourage mediocrity. He doesn't want excellence near him. It reminds him of his own mediocrity. And when you allow that energy into your life, you start to shrink too. You start apologizing for your own strength. You dull your ambition. You second-guess your instincts. Because somewhere deep inside, you've absorbed his fear as your own. There's a brutal truth here, one most people never face. Weak men don't just fail themselves. They infect others. They slow down strong minds. They pollute high standards. They carry the virus of resentment into every space they enter. And the longer you tolerate them, the more they chip away at your potential. Not with force, not with confrontation, but with subtle resistance, with unspoken jealousy, with that constant quiet pressure to play small so they can feel comfortable. But power isn't evil. Strength isn't shameful. Leadership isn't oppression. These are tools neutral in nature, transformative when wielded with clarity. The man who respects power but doesn't crave control is the one who can lead without corrupting, but that takes inner structure. And weak men don't have that. They reject power not out of wisdom but out of fear. They call it peace, but really it's just surrender. You need to protect your space from this energy. Stop mistaking passivity for virtue. Stop apologizing for wanting more. You were not made to dim your light for someone else's comfort. Stand firm in your drive. Own your power without guilt. And when you see that hidden resentment in another man's eyes, walk away. Because no matter how quietly it hides, that weakness will always try to make you less. And if you let it, it will win. But if you don't, it will break. and you will rise. The cost of keeping weak men in your life is not always immediate, but it is always devastating. You won't notice it at first. You'll make excuses. You'll tell yourself they mean well. You'll justify their silence, their hesitation, their unreliability. But slowly, your standards begin to slip. Your instincts grow dull. Your ambition starts to hesitate because weakness is contagious. It doesn't just sit quietly in the corner. It seeps into everything. It rewires your thinking, numbs your drive, and teaches you to settle. A weak man doesn't just hold himself back, he holds you back. Not out of hatred, but out of fear. He fears your strength, fears your clarity, fears the moment you fully step into who you are, because then you'll leave him behind. So he pulls you down in small ways, doubts your ideas, questions your confidence. Distracts you with his chaos, his drama, his emotional instability. And you think you're helping. You think you're being loyal. But in reality, you're being drained. There is no reward for tolerating weakness. There is no prize for staying loyal to people who refuse to grow. The world doesn't give you points for patience with those who sabotage their own potential and yours. And every day you spend around that energy, you lose momentum. You start becoming the version of yourself that accommodates weakness instead of challenging it. And before long, you forget who you were trying to become. You were not made to babysit broken men who don't want to be whole. You were not born to explain basic accountability to people who fear pressure. You are not here to rescue those who are committed to staying small. You're here to build, to grow, to evolve. And that requires strength beside you, not softness that crumbles under responsibility. If someone cannot carry weight, they should not be near your mission, no matter how familiar they are, no matter how long they've been around. Weakness is not an identity. It's a choice. And choices have consequences. Cutting ties with weakness is not cruelty. It's clarity. Because every minute you spend managing someone else's fear is a minute you're not facing your own. Every ounce of energy you give to those who waste it is stolen from the future you're trying to create. And if you keep waiting for them to grow, you'll end up shrinking. Until one day you realize you built your life around someone who was never strong enough to hold it with you. You are not obligated to carry dead weight. You are not selfish for walking away from those who refuse to rise. You are allowed to protect your peace, your power, your potential. And the moment you do, everything changes. Your clarity sharpens. Your energy returns. Your path opens. Because when weakness leaves, strength steps in. And from that place, nothing can hold you back. Not them, not fear, not doubt. Just you and the fire you were always meant to become. Strength leaves a mark. You can feel it when it enters a room. Not because it demands attention, but because it radiates clarity. It's calm under pressure. It speaks without shouting. It doesn't need to prove anything because it already knows who it is. That's the difference. Strong men don't need to be seen to feel valuable. They've built themselves from the inside out. They've done the work. And because of that, they move differently. They lead differently. They love differently. When you encounter real strength, everything around you sharpens, including you. Weak men shake in the face of discomfort. Strong men lean into it. Weak men run from truth. Strong men live by it. Weak men fear rejection. Strong men stand firm even if they stand alone. The difference isn't about genetics, money, status, or noise. It's about what's been forged in silence. Real strength is built in solitude, when no one's watching, when no one's clapping, when everything hurts but you keep going anyway. And when that kind of man shows up in your life, you don't question his presence. You feel it. Strong men take responsibility without waiting to be asked. They don't avoid pressure. They volunteer for it. They don't collapse under conflict. They navigate it with precision. Their mind is disciplined. Their heart is anchored. Their actions align with something deeper than ego. And that's why they're rare, because strength requires sacrifice. It demands pain. It forces you to become someone that fear can't manipulate. Most men avoid that path. But the ones who don't, they become the foundation you can build an empire on. When you're surrounded by strength, you feel safer, not because someone is saving you, but because someone is matching your intensity. There's no guessing, no begging, no babysitting. There's trust. There's presence. There's growth. And if you've never experienced that, it's not too late. But you have to stop settling for less. You have to stop calling weakness love, calling instability passion, calling emotional chaos depth. Start looking for strength in how a man behaves when no reward is attached. That's where the truth lives. You don't need perfection. You need consistency. You need backbone. You need discipline. A man who controls himself doesn't have to control others. A man who faces his fears doesn't project them onto the world. A man who is strong doesn't need to make you feel small. He invites you to rise beside him. And that's the man worth aligning with. That's the energy you should be building with. Let every weak presence in your life reveal itself by comparison. Let their excuses burn in the light of someone who actually shows up, and when you see the difference, choose courage, choose direction, choose someone who doesn't drain you, but drives you forward, because strength isn't rare by accident, it's rare by choice. And once you choose it, you'll never again be fooled by anything less. You'll see clearly, you'll walk taller, and you'll finally stop apologizing for demanding what you've always deserved. There comes a moment when clarity becomes a weapon. When you've seen the truth, you can't go back to pretending. You can't keep entertaining weakness just to avoid confrontation. You can't keep lowering your standards to protect someone else's comfort. The truth forces a decision: either evolve or stay trapped. And if you felt the weight of carrying others who refuse to grow, you already know which choice is killing you slowly. It's the one where you wait. Wait for them to change. Wait for them to show up. Wait for them to become something they're not even trying to be. That weight becomes your cage. You don't rise by dragging the unwilling with you. You rise by releasing them. You rise by getting honest about who actually adds to your vision and who only subtracts from it. Weak men will always make you feel like your standards are too high. They'll call your ambition unrealistic. They'll mock your discipline, question your urgency, and try to water down your hunger, not because you're wrong, but because you're reminding them of everything they're avoiding. And the longer you tolerate that, the more it seeps into your system like a slow toxin. You begin to accept mediocrity disguised as support. You begin to settle for inconsistency dressed as love. You begin to tell yourself you're being understanding, when really you're abandoning your mission for someone who was never strong enough to walk beside it. That ends the moment you decide to change, the moment you stop apologizing for wanting more, the moment you stop asking people to meet you halfway when they won't even take the first step. That's when your real life begins. You weren't made to live in emotional chaos. You weren't born to constantly question whether the people around you are capable of handling pressure. That is not peace. That is not partnership. That is not power. That's survival. And survival mode isn't where greatness lives. It's where dreams go to die. If someone cannot regulate themselves, they cannot build with you. If they cannot commit to growth, they cannot walk beside you. And if they refuse to rise, you are not obligated to fall. Every day you wait is a day you lose momentum. Every excuse you accept is a reason you delay your next level. You're not here to babysit broken potential. You're here to become undeniable. And that requires being ruthless with what you allow. It means cutting off anything that weakens your focus. It means protecting your energy like it's sacred, because it is. The people around you either amplify your mission or they dilute it. There is no neutral. There is no in-between. You know what you need to do. Not tomorrow. Not when they improve. Now. Because your future does not wait for anyone. And the more you cling to weakness, the more it robs you of the strength you've already earned. Let go. Move forward and never look back. Every weak man you've tolerated was a mirror reflecting back the parts of you that still doubted your worth. The fear of walking alone, the fear of being too much, the fear of being seen as demanding, intense, or hard to love. But what you called loyalty was often just hesitation. What you called patience was avoidance, and what you called connection was sometimes just shared weakness dressed as intimacy. That ends now, because if you've made it this far, it means you're ready to face what most people spend their lives running from: your own power. It starts by deciding who you will no longer be. The person who tiptoes around fragile egos, the one who quiets their truth so others feel secure, the one who holds back their ambition to make space for someone who has no intention of rising. That version of you was necessary once, but not anymore. Growth demands a new level of self-respect. One that doesn't flinch, one that doesn't explain, one that walks away the second energy feels misaligned. Because at this point, your peace isn't optional, it's a requirement. You must become the type of person whose presence demands clarity, not by force. Not by intimidation, but through sheer integrity. When you raise your standard, weak men feel it instantly. They either rise or disappear. Both are a gift. Because clarity exposes what time used to hide, you'll start seeing patterns for what they are. Excuses that once sounded reasonable will now sound like chains. Emotional chaos that once felt romantic will now feel like poison. And that shift isn't cruelty. It's awakening. You were never too much. You were just too aware for people who refuse to open their eyes. And now that you see it, your responsibility is to act. To cut ties not out of anger, but out of alignment. To protect your mission without guilt. To choose strength without compromise. Because every time you do, you send a message, not just to others, but to yourself. That you will no longer negotiate with weakness. That your time, your energy, your life is too valuable to waste on people who won't evolve. Let them call it selfish. Let them call it cold. But when the results show up, when your peace becomes unshakable, when your circle becomes pure, when your power no longer flickers in the wind, you'll understand. You didn't lose anything. You gained yourself. And that gain is worth every goodbye, every boundary, every moment of solitude required to build the life you were always meant to live. So don't slow down. Don't soften your edge. Don't explain your transformation. Let it speak for itself. Let your silence be the boundary. Let your results be the answer, because once you choose strength, weakness has no place left to hide. And once you live by truth, nothing false can follow you. Not anymore. Not ever again. Power doesn't beg. It doesn't plead. It doesn't chase approval or shrink itself to avoid judgment. Power stands alone even when it's misunderstood. It moves with direction, not desperation. And the moment you choose to live by this truth, everything changes. You stop explaining your ambition to people who fear it. You stop negotiating with energy that drains you. You stop seeking permission to become everything you know you were born to be. That shift is where your life begins, because it's the moment you stop giving weakness a seat at your table. Most people don't fear failure. They fear the responsibility that comes with strength. Because once you see clearly, there's no going back to ignorance. Once you raise your standards, there's no comfort in mediocrity. Once you become powerful, you're no longer allowed to play small. That's why so many choose to remain half-built. It's easier to be liked than respected, easier to fit in than stand out, easier to be agreeable than honest. But that path leads nowhere. It's a slow erosion of self, a silent surrender to comfort over clarity. You were not made for that. You were made to cut through the noise, to own your presence, to walk into rooms and not question your right to be there. And that requires more than talent. It requires inner structure, relentless self-respect, the discipline to say no without guilt, the courage to walk alone when needed, the integrity to stay grounded when others lose themselves trying to be accepted. That's the price of power, and it's a price worth paying. Weak men will always fear this version of you. They'll call you harsh, detached, intimidating. Because your very existence challenges everything they've avoided becoming. You'll become a mirror they can't look into without breaking. But that's not your burden to carry. Your role is not to soften your truth for those who've never faced theirs. Your role is to keep rising, keep building, keep sharpening. And in doing so, you give silent permission for others to do the same. You do not owe comfort to those committed to stagnation. You owe them your example. That's how transformation spreads. Not through pity, but through power. You become a standard, not a savior. And the more you walk in alignment, the less tolerance you'll have for anything that doesn't match it. That's not arrogance. That's evolution. And once you taste it, you'll never again question whether you're asking for too much. You'll realize you were asking too little. Protect your energy like it's gold. Speak with purpose or stay silent. Move with vision or don't move at all. Let your presence be felt without explanation. And let your life become the proof of what happens when you no longer tolerate the weight of weakness. Because when you stand fully in your power, everything false gets exposed, and everything real begins. Without apology, without compromise, without delay. This is the level where the world no longer defines you, because you've already defined yourself.